So like she said, I'm Todd Breitenstein. The kids call me Mr. Todd because it's easier than Breitenstein. And I call myself the Grateful Gardener because I am always grateful to have my hands in the soil and to be able to interact and learn from the plants and to learn from nature. It is truly a blessing in my life. I'm also a deadhead, so that doesn't hurt. All right, so we're going to talk about some lawn reduction techniques. I just want to preface by saying I'm not anti-lawn. I actually love lawns. My first business was a lawn care company. I started in high school with a friend. We were mowing 30 lawns a week by the time we graduated and went to college. My thing with lawns is the way we actually take care of them. It's the herbicides and the pesticides and the petrochemicals that go into actually caring for the lawns. Most of the herbicides and pesticides are actually carcinogenic, which affects the ecosystem as a whole, but most important to me is it actually has an impact on the landscapers. So if you don't know what 2,4-D is, look into it. I'm not going to get any further onto that soapbox because I want to talk about positive things today, things that you can do just to reduce your lawn and some cool ideas that I've come across over the years. So if it were only that easy, yes, we would all have that. Or maybe this easy, we would have that. Beautiful, right? But let's get back to life and reality. It's a little bit more like that, right? Scorched earth, dried up, bugs, grubs, not enough rain, and a perennial grass. Perennials don't live forever, and so unfortunately our lawns actually die out over time. They don't stay nice and dense and lush without a lot of help. Primarily aerating, so that would be aerating and top dressing would be my number one thing if I was going to give you a prescription for how to maintain your lawn, and then reseed it every fall. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about soil with some inspiration tucked in between, and then we're going to talk about some soil reduction techniques. As I said, I love nature, so that's what the inspiration is. But before we get it started, I like to just play a prize. I have a few prizes for you guys. I have a jar of pea seeds, I have a jar of sunflower seeds, and I have a rain gauge. So what we're going to do is a few times throughout the night we will identify a plant. So whoever identifies it can get a prize. So let's start with this. Anybody? Doing a little bit more. Beautiful, isn't it? Amazing. I couldn't believe when I found this. Ladies? No. No. It's actually a tree. Believe it or not. Does that help? Beech, yes. There we go. We have it. That is American beech. Who knew what their seedlings looked like? When I saw it, I was like, what is this tropical thing that's growing here? This isn't like, what is happening? Beech trees are one of our climax trees. They do represent the pinnacle of the Northeast forest when it reaches its the top of its succession. All right, so now we're done with prizes. So you get to choose a prize back there. Once we get through this, you're probably going to want the sunflower seeds. All right, so we'll just talk about soil analysis. What is soil? What I'm really leading to is that is super common right now is the right plant for the right place. So I just want to kind of give you an idea of how you can figure out what you have so that you can make better choices when it comes to what plants to put in. All right, I'm supposed to stand behind here so he can get me on the thing. I like to wander around. It's like my gardening. I just like to randomly throw things wherever and so see what happens. All right, so sandy soil, kind of obvious, right? Sandy soil, rocky soil, oh poor you. Amazing that things we think need so much. We think they need so much organic matter and they have to have this perfect soil, and yet here we have beach plum producing fruit in straight sand, right? And we have seaside goldenrod in a spot that gets splashed by the ocean growing out of a crack in the rock, right? So it's pretty self-explanatory. If you have rocky soil or sandy soil, sand runs right through your hands, right? All right, so clay is like what you use to make pots, if you squeeze your hands together and it stays, which we're gonna do, so clay is the other one. Loam is your organic content within soil, and dirt is what's underneath your fingernails. Soil is made up of two primary components, just in terms of its functionality. So bacterial or fungal, in 1 tablespoon of healthy soil, there can be over 1 billion microscopic organisms, so bacteria. So we're talking about tons and tons and tons of bacteria. Bacteria are primarily responsible for your grassy type conditions, and then the fungal conditions are primarily responsible for the forest. Sun versus shade. Mushrooms prefer it in the sun, although there are a whole host of species of fungi that do grow in the sun. So the reason why we talk about this is because we're going to the right place. So certain plants like a bacterial soil, certain plants like a fungal type of soil. Woodland type species are going to prefer a more fungal dominant soil versus the grassland, the prairie plants, the flowers are going to prefer more of a bacterially dominated soil. And lucky for us, most vegetables prefer kind of a little bit of both, like right in the middle of a bacterial and a fungal soil. So soil tests that you can do, just so you have an idea of what you have. Like I said, sand is just going to run right through your hands. This is super easy. You just do the squeeze test. Just squeeze the soil in your hands. If it stays together, you're going to have mostly clay. When you hit it with your finger, it doesn't fall apart, you're going to be mostly clay soil. If you hit it with your finger and it falls apart like chocolate cake, that's going to be a loam type soil. That's what you want. You want your soil to hold together, but you want it to fall apart when you tap on it. So that's the easiest way to know if the soil, if it runs through your hands, it's sandy. If it stays together, it's clay. If it falls apart when you tap on it, it's loam. We're going for loam for the most part, unless there's a certain type of plant that you really want to grow that, like beach plum, prefers sandy soil. So find a spot in your yard that's sandy soil and then choose plants that like to grow in sandy soils, as opposed to then trying to turn that sandy soil into clay to grow something that wants to grow in clay. It's a lot easier to just choose the right plant. So do you see where I'm going with this, right? All right, so percolation test. So this is to assess your soil's drainage, right? So simple, easy way to do this, we're gonna take a spade, which is about 1 foot, the size of a normal shovel, and dig a hole, right? And then fill the hole with water and walk away. Let the water drain out, and then come back and fill the hole again. And the second time you fill it, you're actually going to observe how long it takes for the water to drain out. If it drains really quickly, like boom, you have sandy soil. If it sits there and doesn't go anywhere and you're like looking at it an hour later and it's still there, you're talking about a clay soil. It's very clay because it's not draining quickly. If it drains in 15 minutes, 5 minutes, you have a loamy soil. While you do that, you've now got this dirt. While you're waiting for the initial filling, you're going to count the worms. All right, so this is how we're going to tell what's there in terms of biological activity. You can tell a lot about the soil by the number of worms. If you have 10 or more worms in there, you're in pretty good shape, right? Worm poop, worm castings increase the bacteria in the soil, the beneficial bacteria that are going to actually be decomposing and helping the soil bring life to your plants. Increase 8 times on worm castings. So the more worms there is, the better the bacterial component, and the bacteria has a huge role within the soil. All right, so pH. This is common soil testing that you might do. You would see the pH test kits. This is the one type of soil testing that you might want to do because you can't actually ascertain it by using your hands or doing observations. Because it is specific to certain plants. Certain plants prefer an acidic soil versus an alkaline soil. So this is a good test. pH test kits are actually relatively accurate. The rest that come with those kits a lot of times for the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are wildly inaccurate. They're not always reliable. So if that's really something that you want to know, it is best to do a actual professional soil test, and UMass Extension does them for cheap. They do an awesome job if it's something that you really want to know. I'm going this way for myself. This is all I need to know. All I need to know is the smell. I can tell you everything I need to know by the way it smells. If you go out into the woods and you roll a log over and you take up some of that soil and you smell it, that's what you want. You're smelling the fungus, you're smelling the bacteria. That is what you're going for. It's as easy as that. If you pick up your dirt and it smells like the forest, that's what you want. And any of the plants that you want to grow are going to be happy in that, because there's biology. 90% of all of the plants have formed symbiotic relationships with the biology in the soil. They mutually benefit each other. So the plants come first, and then comes the biology. If you take the spoils out of a mine, which you go down into the mine, you dig out the subsoil where there's no weed seeds, there's no biology happening, and you pile that up outside, the plants come first. They've tested this. They know that the first thing that happens is the plants. The plants turn the sunlight into sugar, and they excrete it through their roots, and that feeds the bacteria and the fungi that are in the soil. One of the most amazing things that we have going on this planet is that root and fungal interaction. So the fungus are a massive network that run through the soil, and they have the ability to break down rock. They're part of the rock cycle. They free up minerals from the rocks, and then they exchange the minerals that they release from the rocks with the plants. The plants' exudates are actually excretions. Exudates are nature's taxes. Exudates are what plants pay the bacteria and the fungi in the soil for certain minerals. Right, so this is why I brought the bacteria and the fungal part up, is because I know that the plants need the biology to be able to do things like adjust the pH, right? So I don't need to do a pH test, because I know the plants have the ability to do that with the bacteria and the fungi to change the pH right at the root zone. So it's not a worry to me, right? So I know that I can just allow the plants to do what they do best, which is feed the biology in the soil. I just have to get out of the way. If I get out of the way, 9 times out of the 10, the plant is going to do what the plant wants to do, which is make a seed. And in order to make a seed, they have to flower, and that's what I want to see. Is I want to see the flowers, right? Or eat the fruit if they're producing a fruit. And so if I get out of the way and I let them do what they want to do, then I know I'm going to get to see what I want, which is either fruit or flowers. And so I do actually smell the soil. Sans souci means without worry. That's what I'm talking about, right? It's roughly translated from French as to be without a worry, right? So don't worry, let the plants and the bacteria do what they do, and the fungi. And this is why I'm not all up about getting a soil test, is because once I have those results in my hand, now I'm like, oh my God, I know that all I have to do is add 23 pounds of phosphorus when we get, and then it's going to be just exactly perfect. But I can't do that. I can't get there. I mean, the calculations on a drop spreader are like way beyond me. I'm like, no. Plus, it's not fun. Like, I don't want it to be a prescription. I don't want it to be like I'm dialing in something that isn't inherently dialed in. Nature isn't like exact. It does what it needs to do when it needs to do it, and it overcomes adversity all the time, like in ways that we don't even have the comprehension of within ourselves to be able to overcome. Nature does all the time. It's absolutely fantastic. Wow, imagine that. Look at that tree growing right over another stump. Imagine if that's what you had to do, right? The amount of adversity that nature overcomes is absolutely fantastic. So there's your little bit of inspiration tucked in there. All right, so talking about techniques for how we get into removing some of the lawn, just letting nature take its course, helping nature take its course. You've probably thought of this. This is a topic, right? Sheet mulching, hugel hills, vegetables, prairie meadows, and then some things that you probably didn't think of. All right, so, get to break the ice again. I've got a plant for you. Let's see what we have here. This is a good one. So this is the tree, not the lily at the base. So you're going for a tree that bears fruit. Ooh, who said that? You said that. Yeah, that is pawpaw, the Michigan banana, native to the U.S. Custard-like fruit that kind of tastes a little bit between banana and mango. In the Midwest, in Michigan, they have pawpaw festivals. It's kind of a permaculture darling in terms of like the cool fruit tree to have in your edible landscape, right? So yeah, super cool. Loves the understory, so if you have a shady area, also prefers to grow in a like a riverbank situation. So if you had somewhere like that was like on the edge of a wet area that was shady, this would be a good understory tree. They have tons of seeds in them, really big fat seeds, which is why we don't get them at the grocery store, and they're hard to ship because they're like custard. So, but you can get them on farms in the Midwest. All right, so let's talk about nature taking its course. This is just let your lawn grow, right? Who knew that our lawn could be that beautiful, right? Well, at least to me anyway, I know. All right, so this is literally let's let nature take its course. Just stop mowing. Just no mow May, right? Isn't that a thing, right? No mow May. If you let nature, it will find a way. One of my favorite things to do is watch nature take back from us what we did. This is over at the Air Base in Weymouth. If you ever want a super cool place to go and look at natural succession and see what nature does when we leave stuff behind, it's phenomenal, and it's mostly native. The selection that's happening over there, it's a lot of sand, it's a lot of asphalt, literally from the cracks, it's in the runways, it's creeping in from the edges. You can see what nature does when it wants to grow, which is it always finds a way. It always finds a space. Adversity is where nature thrives. It loves it. There's always an answer in nature. There's always a plant for every single place. So how can we help nature along? So there's some certain things that we can do in order to kind of facilitate the process. So say I have like a sandy, loamy soil mix kind of along the side of my driveway, and I wanted to fix that. So what could we do? So I have some suggestions for you. So we're going to take care of the soil life by creating humus, right? And so green manures are plants that we can intentionally plant in order to help grow that soil biology. So there's plants that will do the repairing for us. They'll help to build the soil just by their very nature. That's what they're intended to do. There's a whole bunch of plants that I call repairer plants. They're plants that are there to fix the soil. They're there to build topsoil. And the way they do this is because they have really deep roots. And so they can get down deep and work with the fungus and the bacteria to bring up those nutrients that they then put into their leaves. And when the leaves die on the top of the soil, they start to rebuild the soil. My personal favorite is dandelions. They are a biodynamic accumulator, I know, but there's other choices because dandelions are a tough one. I love them personally, but my neighbors don't, so I'm not one to leave dandelion flowers flying because that just puts more pressure on my neighbor who doesn't like the dandelions, and then that just means they're going to be using more things to get rid of the dandelions, which is not what I want. So I do actually go out and take care of dandelions. I typically just pull the flowers off. That's just what I do, and I leave the leaves there. All right, so biodynamic accumulator, that's your key word. So here's what I'm talking about. The plant on the left is clover. You can see that it has multiple roots, but they're deep, right? Clover is in the legume family, so it works with bacteria in the soil to build nitrogen in the soil. It also creates quite a bit of vegetation that dies and builds the topsoil. The center plant is grass because I just wanted you to get an idea of the root structure of a grass, and that's probably some type of fescue. And then there you see the dandelion with that single taproot, right? So tons of plants have that single taproot structure that goes down really, really deep, and it has the ability to then bring up nutrients from deep down in the soil. All parts of the dandelion are edible. All right, so let's talk about what plants we might use. So legumes are going to be your essential plant, right? So legumes are members of the pea family: clover, vetch, beans, lupin. Oh, there's a good one for you, right? The gorgeous plant. Those are actually a legume, and they actually do build soil. So what we're thinking about is all right, so I know I'm trying to build the soil here, and I know that I want it to become improved. So I'm going to plant some plants here that I know I'm going to allow to die, and I know that it's going to take some time, but I am intentionally planting some things that a lot of people might consider weeds, but I know that they have the best chance of actually improving the soil. So I'm going to go with it, but I know that I'm going to chop them down. I know eventually that I'm going to smother that place and cover it up. So I'm okay with introducing some weed type species because I know that I'm going to be then working that place again down the road. So I'm all right with introducing these things, like vetch can kind of get around, right? But I know that it's okay because I'm going to then tamp down those plants, kill them, and then allow them to build the topsoil. So I'm okay with that. I also know that I'm going to have weeds no matter what I do. Like, it doesn't matter if I bring in brand new compost from somewhere. It only takes a matter of time for me to have weeds. So it's like, what am I going to do? Am I going to plant the weeds that I know are going to be beneficial to me, or am I going to buy compost and spend a bunch of money and then have weeds anyway, right? Because it's going to happen. I have no control over that. So these are your choices for just your poor soil. You're growing these plants just to start the building process. If it's really compacted, we can use things like daikon radish, which make big, deep roots, and then in the wintertime, that root freezes and turns to organic matter deep in the soil, but it also opens up the soil. Same thing with burdock, rye, oats, Queen Anne's lace, which we're going to talk a lot about in a little bit, and pokeweed. I know, pokeweed, right? Pokeweed has crazy roots. It has insane root structure, right? And it's actually technically edible too, like poke salad. That song, Poke Salad Annie, right? That's actually from the poke plant. Famous Elvis? No? All right, sorry. One of my favorites. All right, so these are just some ways to break up the soil. Daikon radish being your top choice because it grows really quickly and easily. All right, so sometimes I'm thinking that I know that the soil is on its way and I've started to rebuild it, and so now I'm going to start to plant things that might be beneficial to me. So I'm going to start to plant things that I might be able to forage from, or that might also benefit insects. So I'm going to start trying to build an insect population because I want to be able to have balance of good bugs and bad bugs, as that's going to happen. Eventually I'm going to end up with bugs of all nature. So why not start stacking the cards in my favor? Some of the plants that we would choose would be borage, yarrow, comfrey, tansy, calendula, mullein. Mullein has crazy roots and is a member of the snapdragon family. Plantains are awesome for boo-boos. That's like a typical lawn weed. You guys all have it. You've seen it. It's awesome for fixing up scrapes and insect bites. It's also edible, kind of tastes like mushrooms. Hyssop, chamomile, hops. Hops is a vine, so you do have to, you can let it grow on the ground. Anybody, if you want a list of the plants and whatnot, I do have a sign-up sheet and I will email you. I have a list of all the plants that are covered in here. And so just for forage, turnips and sunflowers, purslane, Jerusalem artichoke, which are perennial sunflowers, lamb's quarters, So milkweed shoots are edible. I know everybody loves the milkweed, right? So milkweed shoots are edible. So now you can see where I'm going, is that I'm starting to choose some plants that I know are either medicinal or edible, but are also helping to repair the soil at the same time. I can grow these plants and literally just smash them down at the end of the season if I don't want them to come back, or halfway through the season if I'm really trying to facilitate that soil building more rapidly. Or some of these you can do in the fall as well. So that's another strategy, is doing it in the fall. All right, so here you have Queen Anne's lace. Queen Anne's lace is from the Apocyea family. So Apocyea being the carrots. These plants are super important for insects and for building soil and for loosening the soil. The carrot family has 3,700 species. But what's great about them is every flower head has lots of little flower heads. So the insect only has to stop once, and then it has all these different places where it can get to the nectar. So it saves it time and energy. But then the stems are hollow, so it's a place where they can lay eggs. The taproot is what we're talking about. They have the deep roots, so it's loosening the soil as it grows. And then the umbels is what I was just describing, is that multiple flower head. And there's lots of different flowers in this. Queen Anne's lace is the one that you typically see around here. But you can let carrots go to seed. Like if you grow carrots and you don't harvest every single one, or you have a few that you didn't thin and they're just growing too close together, let them grow, let them go to seed. It's not going to hurt anything. They're not going to make delicious carrot seed, because more than likely they're going to get crossed up with the Queen Anne's lace, which is pretty much everywhere, and so you're going to have more of a gingery rooted type of carrot. So yes, love Queen Anne's lace, love all of these, the apocyas. This is also good advice just for your vegetable garden, where we're talking about the taproot type of plants. If you cut your plants at the base of the plant and leave the roots in the soil, then those roots are all going to decay and turn into organic matter. But every place where they were is now an opportunity for critters to go through, like a highway, for air to infiltrate, for water to infiltrate. So you're going to build structure to the soil beyond just adding that organic content. All right, so you probably thought of this, right? Just kind of rounding out the edges, hardscapes. There you have the lupin in that one. So hardscapes is a great option if you're trying to reduce your lawn, just rounding out the corners. That's where I always start. If somebody wants to reduce their lawn, just like cutting the corners, like instead of being dramatic about it and like trying to get rid of the whole entire lawn all at once, it's just kind of slowly, season by season, building around the corners and coming in a little bit, planting as we can, planting as the budget allows, which we'll get into as well. So just some more hardscaping ideas. Awesome what they have out here at the library, low impact, the gravel and the mulch, right? Only issue is weeding, right? That is one of the benefits of a lawn that we often overlook. It's a lot easier just to mow a lawn than to like have to weed a whole entire lawn full of like 12 different types of creeping thyme, you know, because weeds are gonna come, right? So I love those. I love those round edges on that one on the right. So sand dunes, if you get sand dunes, you know, they are naturally going to have a successional process. So they're going to start off with sparse grasses, but over time they are going to fill in. There's definitely a plant for those places. Pitch pines are going to love that sandy soil. You are going to get heaths and heathers and bayberry. Sweet fern also loves the sandy soil. So you will actually be able to put natives in if you want, or natives will come that will take over the area. My favorite choice is sunflowers. This is just a patch of sunflower that we took out over in Hingham on 228. That's where the actual seeds came from. The homeowner gave me some of the sunflower seeds from last year. She's been doing it, I think, 5 years now. I think she even started an Instagram page for her sunflowers on Main Street because so many people drive by honking and like send letters, and we're like, we love your sunflowers. The birds love them, the bees love them. If you love the goldfinches and the purple finches, they are nuts about sunflowers. Super easy way to invite more wildlife to your yard, especially chipmunks. But there it is again on the left. That's just a sunflower field I came across in upstate New York. Me being silly, taking pictures out of the window while I'm driving. Don't tell. All right, so this is kind of your new way of taking out lawns. It's new, but it's old, but this is the permaculture way of building soil. It's called sheet mulching or lasagna beds. So you're literally just building layers of organic material over lawn area. So the photo on the left is rather aggressive in the sense that it's kind of tall and built into some chicken wire. But this one comes from Toby Hemingway's Gaia's Garden, the picture. If you're interested in permaculture at all, Toby Hemingway's Gaia's Garden is the #1 selling permaculture book in the world. Super easy to understand, loaded with tons of awesome information. But what we're doing is we're just putting down a layer of cardboard that's going to suppress the weeds or grass from coming up, and then we're going to build layers of organic material over that, from dried leaves to that's a carbon like a straw, to green like grass clippings, and then some manure, and then some more straw. So you're just going to alternate layers. This is basically composting in place. So if you want to get a good recipe for sheet mulching, all you have to do is look up composting materials, like what do I put in my compost pile, and then it'll be brown or green. That's how they break out a explanation for how to make your own compost, and you're just going to do layers of them. But the important thing is that at the end, after you've done all these cool layers, you're going to put a layer of newspaper. That's going to keep anything that's in your materials from growing out, so you won't have any weeds growing out. And you're going to put straw over it, which is going to hold the newspaper in place and keep the moisture in, because we want a weed-free soil. So while the soil grows in place, you're not going to have a bunch of weeds popping out because the straw isn't going to grow weeds. This is just to show you a little bit more so you can get an idea of what you're talking about. If you wanted to get rid of the whole lawn here, he's talking about you're going to moisten every level as you go, right? So use your grass clippings, some compost, cardboard, mulch. Like, it could be that simple. Like, you don't have to go crazy and get like stone dust and seaweed and all different types of manures. It can be literally as simple as grass clippings and leaves, or grass clippings and wood chips, right? It doesn't have to be super fancy. If you were going to be going for like a woodland type plant community, then having more wood chips than manures would actually be better, because they're going to be more fungal, right, which those type of plants are going to enjoy. So that's a good explanation of it. Here's just a picture of what we're talking about. So say I love the flare out, like just kind of like taking an existing bed and flaring out from it, throwing down cardboard, and then doing those layers over it. In theory, you could just put mulch right over the cardboard, right, and just put down wood chips. So when I say wood chips, I'm talking about what comes from a tree company. You can typically get them for free. You can call Chip Drop, and they'll just bring wood chips, right? They're going to turn gray. If that color isn't suitable to you, use wood chips. They're free. They're a good local resource. And then just put a little bit of mulch on top, so it's the color that you like. You'll save yourself money, and it'll be more aesthetically pleasing. I actually kind of like the gray color that wood chips turn. It doesn't bother me. And they're free, like I said. And this is like a roll of cardboard. So like if you don't have enough of cardboard around and you can't get it, you can get that from like Uline. You can just get like cardboard on a roll, or from like a hardwood flooring companies, like moving companies. It's what they lay out to protect your floors when you're moving. So that's obviously a nice straight line. So with this whole thing, it's about patience, right? So we're using plants to do our job for us. They're repairing the soil, so we have to be patient, right? We have to be patient like nature. For that tree to grow out of a rock, it wasn't easy, right? It's literally growing out of the top of a boulder with no known nutrients inside of a rock. It certainly isn't full of a bunch of compost down in there that's going to make it super happy. I know how it works. Do you guys want to know how it works? It's actually pretty cool. So the tree's roots, as they go through the rock, get scraped, and that's organic material. That organic material gets eaten by the bacteria, and the bacteria work with the plant in exchange for those exudates to give the plant the minerals that it needs. So they're in the crack. And then what's even more brilliant is the trees, like we think of a tree's roots going down into the soil and maybe out some. As they go through the cracks, they can go in, but they can also go up. They can go backwards, right? So this is how you'll see a massive tree growing out of a cliff, and you're like, what the heck? How is that possible? It's because its roots are actually way far into the cliff or into the rock, and they go in every direction once they get in there. And they feed themselves as they go with the help of the bacteria. Yeah, that's inspirational. All right, so this is now when we're getting a little bit more, but everybody has a log pile at their house. There's a punky pile of logs in your neighbor's yard that you wish weren't there. I know it. And so this is our way of saying, hey, we've got this resource on hand. What can we do with it? What are we going to do? We're going to turn it into a hugelkultur, which is a mound of logs, right? So you can do it in a trench depending on what you want, but a true hugelkultur is like tall, and it's intentionally tall to build up enough biomass to be able to heat up and break down quickly, because we're soil building. We're not building a permanent mound. We're actually building soil. We're just using logs to do that. And as we go along the way, there's a lot of benefits from having those logs there. They hold a ton of moisture. They're like a sponge, so they retain moisture, so whatever you plant goes down and grabs that moisture. They are decaying, and so the biology is off-gassing and releasing heat, so it actually heats up the soil, and it creates a microclimate, and microclimates are super cool. Right? Microclimates are something that you should all be looking for in your yard. The spot against your house where the daffodils come up sooner, that's a microclimate, right? Because it's tucked out of the wind, it gets a solar gain because the sun is bouncing off of the house, so the soil there warms sooner. That's the best way to understand what microclimates are. They're all through your yard, against the fence, against the shed, behind the garage. There's all different places, warm to cool, sunnier, shadier. So all of these places are giving you the added advantage of being able to either plant something sooner, or to be able to protect something from the wind, or to plant something that might not actually be the right zone. But I know that I've got this little microclimate where I could plant something that doesn't actually grow here without dying. So say something like rosemary, right, or lavender. I might not always have the best luck with those coming back from year to year, so I'm going to choose a place where it's protected from the wind and is warmer because it's on that south side of my house. So using those to our advantage. What happens with hugels is because you have two of them, in between you actually create a microclimate, right? So as the sun comes over, it hits one side of the hill, which warms it up, but the other side's still in the shade, so it's cool. Warm to cool cycles, so now the air starts flowing around in there and it warms both of them. It's absolutely fantastic to watch what happens on hugel hills in the spring, because they do come to life sooner than everywhere else because of the actual warming of the soil from the biology. But that microclimate, seeing which side of the hugel comes to life sooner, and then how plants even on the shady side of the hugel come to life sooner than the same plants in other places in your yard. Super great for herbs. All right, so that's enough on hugels. You guys will go down that rabbit hole tonight, I'm sure. So I just want to talk about why we might consider going towards vegetable gardens as opposed to lawn, especially in this day and age where we're getting into the native plants. Native plants are super important, and they are drought tolerant. in most cases, they're best suited for our climate, so it's really, really wise, but there's not enough space. Only 7% of the nation is actually yard and places where we could plant native plants. So that's not enough to even come close to stopping the loss of biodiversity, because the other 93% of the country is predominantly monoculture, right? And not lawn monoculture, corn and soybeans, forest being monoculture. We don't plant integrated forest. When you drive down the road and you see the forest from the street, you think it's all like a different bunch of trees, but when you get to the other side where they actually cut down all the trees and they hit them from your view with that nice row of stuff that looks wild, it's all the same trees. So the loss of biodiversity that's happening nationwide is not gonna, I don't want you to not plant native plants. I want you to plant native plants because they do better, they perform better for you as a gardener. But if your motivation is that you're gonna save the planet by planting native plants, that's not gonna work. We have to change the system of what we consume, right? We need local farms, we need local food systems, we need integrated food systems, we need regenerative agriculture type food systems where they're growing multiple different species within the same area that are growing naturally versus clear, plowed, tilled, and turned over and then planted with the same thing over and over and over again, right? So if everybody grew one tomato, basil, and marigold in a pot and ate those tomatoes, or if you just grew one salad, to make a salad from the grocery store, the food ingredients have traveled 40,000 miles to get to your plate, right? So if every one of us, what are we, 200 million? How many million people in the United States, right? If we all just ate one meal from our yard, or if we just went out and found some plantain instead of going and buying some Neosporin in a plastic tube made out of petroleum jelly for our cuts, and we made our own salve from some plants in our yards, now you're talking about changing something. Instead of running out to Home Depot to get something new, if every one of us did that just once a year, the hundreds of millions of things that would change from a ecological standpoint would be amazing. Versus, okay, I'm gonna plant the monarch plant, the milkweed, the milkweed, right? Which, sorry milkweed, you're not that attractive. Some of you are really nice, but the common milkweed, really? We can do better. Tomatoes, what's a really beautiful flower? Peas. Peas are gorgeous flowers, incredible. Just grow some peas, eat a handful of peas from your yard, and that's a totally different outcome if all of us were doing that. So, all right, I'm off of my regenerative agriculture soapbox. But you get the point. I think you get what I'm trying to get at is we need more local food systems, which is why we need permaculture. All right, so here's a cool idea. Just dig a hole in your lawn and put some tomato plants in. You know what loves lawn soil? Tomatoes. Seriously, right? All you gotta do is this is literally a hole, right? I took the grass, I dug a hole, I flipped it over, and I planted a tomato in it. And then when I mowed the lawn next to it, I took the grass clippings and I laid them over the lawn, right? It was as easy as that. Unfortunately, I didn't get to stake those tomatoes because I was forced to move from that location. But it's that easy, right? It's that easy. It's literally a hole in your lawn, right? A couple of posts. That's the Florida weave method. It's just a cable going across, and you just hang a string. The tomatoes go up it. All right, so tomato holes, cardboard, and wood chips, all free, right? Your neighbors are shopping on Amazon. There's lots of cardboard around. Oh yeah, another one of my personal favorites. Dad doesn't mow where the pumpkins grow, right? Pumpkins. Dig a 5-gallon bucket-sized hole in your yard, mix it with some cow manure, pour it back into the hole. You've got a mound, plant some pumpkin seeds in it, and away you go. Pumpkins grow enormous. You could grow butternut squash. Butternut squash store so easily, and they're massive plants. They take up a ton of space. You don't have to mow, right? Also, pumpkin vines and butternut squash have the ability to root in as they grow out. They send a root down into the soil from the vine, so they're able to like get more nutrients for themselves as they go. So this is double digging, so where you're going to dig down twice. So you're going to dig up the area, flip it over, and then you're going to move it to the side, and you're going to dig down below that and bring that up. So this is my double dig method, is that I just dig out the pathway, and I put the pathway on top of the soil next to it, right? And then I lay down cardboard and fill the path with wood chips. So now I don't have any worry about weeds temporarily in my paths. The wood chips hold moisture. The wood chips bring in the fungal component that I'm looking for. And then the edge of the garden bed to the wood chip is like happy town for all of the biology, all the things that want to go there. Worms come in there. They go between the two places. It's super fertile. Just that interaction between the wood chips and the soil is amazing. I did use a tiller for this because I was incorporating biochar and cocoa peat into the soil because I was planning for the long term, and I did want moisture retention. So I did till it together. So there you can see what happened. And you can see me starting a hugel in the background on the left there. It's just a pile of sticks until you cover it with dirt, but it's a good place to save your sticks until you have some dirt. Can you see the rainbow in there? There's a rainbow on the one on the right. Yeah. All right, so creating a meadow, because I know everybody wants to just go full bore and get rid of all their lawn and have this beautiful meadow out there, right? So I do have a couple of tips for you on this. So, wait, one last time. We have one more prize. So we have sunflower seeds, pea seeds, and a rain gauge. 2 inches of rain in a week is more than enough for all your gardens. One of the best things I ever did for my gardening was to get a rain gauge, because then I knew how much rain I had got, and that meant I had less time to water because I knew how much water I had gotten, and so I could spend time doing other things like enjoying the garden, right? And just looking at the interaction between the birds and the bees and the critters in the garden. So this is going to be a little bit more tricky. Maybe not. Maybe somebody knows. No? Oh, who said that? You did? Yes, it's jewelweed. Yes, that is jewelweed, one of my personal favorite plants. It gives me the luxury of being able to pull poison ivy without gloves on. Yes, spotted touch-me-not, jewelweed, Impatiens capensis. It's a swamp plant. I think I might have a picture of it fully grown here. Ah, yes. So this is jewelweed on the left, down there on the bottom right of that picture, and up there it loves growing in wet places. It'll grow in a pot on your patio though. Hummingbirds love it, but it is actually a natural antidote to poison ivy. So you just like squish it up and rub it all over you, and it takes away poison ivy. Jewelweed. It is native. It's native to Massachusetts. You've seen it. I know you have. It's just kind of a weed. But all of the plants that we think are weeds are all the best plants in my book, because they all have awesome like benefits. Like they do stuff. And seriously, hummingbirds love jewelweed. They really do. So if you like hummingbirds, jewelweed is a great plant for them. I put some in a pot on my patio, and it's everywhere now. I noticed like it's coming up in all the pots, and I was like wondering if I was actually gonna, I mean, it's what happens when you plant something that has weed in its name, like, right? Like milkweed, duh, like you're gonna have it everywhere. That tree is actually here in Norwell, actually, and that is over, the left picture is at Norris Reservation, my personal favorite place in the whole entire world. A blessing for all of us, like Eleanor, thank you. And then That tree is that I think it's called Fog Woods. It's off of 123 there near the center. How crazy is that? That tree's alive. That tree is absolutely 100% alive, growing out of that stone wall like that. What? And I think my life is tough, right? Seriously. Like, I got all of these, like, first world problems. So poor me. Yeah. So jewelweed, super cool plant. All right, so how are we going to get there? How are we going to get to a place where I can put in a prairie, right? Prairies exist because of fire. That's what keeps them as prairie, right? Because nature's goal is to create a forest, right? That's its ultimate goal, is it wants a forest. It wants to put trees there. It doesn't want to have it be open flower meadow. Like, eventually a bird is going to drop a seed into the meadow and a tree is going to grow. So how does that stay? How does that place stay as a meadow? Fire. So how are you going to get there? You're going to light your lawn on fire, right? Right? No. Not very practical, but if you really want a prairie, I'm telling you, this is the way to go. Like, it is the way to go. Because it's going to create the conditions that the prairie would have, the seed from prairie seed would have actually needed. Lots of the prairie plants, like lupin, they like fire because it cracks the seed open. It helps the germination process, right? But a little more practical, just smothering and solarizing. All right, so smothering with black plastic, as you see here, that is actually smothering, right? Versus solarizing, you're going to use clear plastic, right? So black plastic gets hot, but it actually doesn't let the heat get into the soil the same way as is when you use clear plastic. Clear plastic, the sun actually gets into the soil and the heat gets trapped under the plastic, but it actually heats the soil up. And the plants do photosynthesis, so they grow for a bit, but then they get starved from water and oxygen, and then they go kaput, right? So if you were to till it, rake it, now you till it, you stir up all the weed seeds, right, that are in there, and then you water it so that they're like happy, and then you cover them with clear plastic, right? And right, and temporarily it's going to work until they're not wet anymore, and then they're hot and dry and die. All right, so that is probably the best way. Leaves work, though. Like, if you just want to leave your leaves, I'm sure you've had a spot where you left your leaves over the lawn and then found out that the grass was dead underneath. All right, so now you've got this space, right? You've solarized it, you've scorched it, and so how am I going to create prairie, right? So most economical is to buy seeds. All right, this is the key point if you're going by seed, is that you need to be able to identify what it is that you have sown, right? Because not all of us know what every single prairie plant looks like when it's as small as that jewelweed, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to take a tray or some containers, and you're going to fill them with potting soil, preferably something weed-free, and you're going to sprinkle some of the same seed that you're going to plant out into your prairie onto that pot. And then that way you can keep it and use it as your identifier. You can carry it around with you, and you can see as your prairie comes up what's supposed to be there, not the weeds, because you're going to get weeds, right? Like unless you have scorched earth, you're not killing everything, right? So plug trays, second most economical. You can get like either 82 or 120 little plug plants in a tray, and they typically cost somewhere around $1 a piece. So for not a ton of money, you can actually buy a fair amount of plants. So my best solution is seeds and plugs. It's the most economical, and you're going to get the most results quicker if it's in the budget and you can actually buy full-size plants, right? I'm buying full-size plants. Like, that's what I'm doing, and I'm planting them close together. And I'm getting as many as I can, and I'm planting them close together. Even even at that, if you're just going to do a small area at a time, say like a 10 by 10, then budget that out and do your 10 by 10 with all the plants, and then next year do the 10 by 10 next to it and keep moving, versus trying to go big, like your whole area, because you're going to end up with a mock meadow, right? So this is cool. Like that's kind of what I was going for, is like a mock meadow where I'm just kind of letting the grass grow. But nature is going to do it for you. Like nature is going to drop that seed in there, so you're going to have to mow it or burn it. Like you're not going to just have a prairie or a meadow without having some sort of intervention, because trees are going to come. It's like the airbase picture where the crack in the asphalt has the little violet coming up in it. Stuff's going to happen, right? Especially cedar trees. Like cedar trees grow like weeds around here. There's a lot of them, and they come up, and they're super happy everywhere in Massachusetts. Like they come up, so you're going to end up with some type of woody coming. So you are going to have to manage it. But this is cool though. Like I'm much happier with this than the whole entire lawn. I just know that every once in a while I am going to have to mow it and go through and excavate some sort of woodies. So what type of plants could we put in there? The blue stems, big blue stem and little blue stem are good choices. Sea oats is a good one. All these are just your grasses. So that's the Native Plant Trust. If you guys haven't heard of them, they just have an incredible resources, both physically and on their website. So they have like pictures of all of those plants and then more. But yeah, we'll plug Blue Stem Natives. They're my friends right over there on 53 here in Norwell. You should shop there. So in terms of location, so if we have dry and average soil and full sun, our choices are going to be partridge pea, spotted bee balm, black-eyed Susans, wild strawberries, self-heal, and then wild columbine. Some of those will like the dappled light. Most plants actually like dappled light. Like most plants really like that like filtered light that comes through. Partridge pea is an awesome plant to start with. Like it's super fast growing, and lots of beneficial insects love it. So that's a great one to start with. And then if it's wet to average soil, bergamot and ironweed, Joe Pye weed likes it wet. Same with asters. The bee balms really like moist soil. If it was really wet, you could get away with the cardinal flower. So this is like wet meadow versus dry meadow, right? All right, now we get into my favorite thing. So polycultures are collections of plants that are mutually beneficial. This is a Massachusetts polyculture that you can see all over in the forest around here. And the reason why I'm introducing this is because boulders are the most essential thing of sustainability. I mean, if you really want to get rid of lawn, just drop some big boulders out there. You don't have to take care of them, right? But if you're really lucky, what you'll have happen is you'll get the rock polypody, which just is so much fun to say. It just rolls right off of the tongue. Not as fun as Umbilicea cara, right? The Umbilicea is actually a form of lichen that is a moss at the same time, right? So it's eating the rock, right? It's living on the rock, and then what grows in there is that type of fern that only grows on top of rocks, right? Like it's like the only place you see it is literally on the top of the boulders around here. So I can't get enough of it. And in that one on the left, it also has Virginia creeper. And when you get up close to it, you'll always see other mosses in there too. So they're just like, they're supporting each other living on a rock, right? Like that's the Umbilicea over there. There it is in the spring, the rock polypody coming up, like the fern heads. I can't get enough of it, so you get more. Oh, wait, even more, better and better, right? This is all right around here. Like this is up at the Turkey Hill area and the place across from Stop and Shop in Cohasset, the Whitney and Thayer Woods. If you take the yellow trail, there's these boulders over down there, and if you actually want, there's two super special places to go there. One is the American Holly Grove. If you've not been to the American Holly Grove over in Turkey Hill and the Whitney Thayer Woods, It's really, really cool. It's like you can actually see the generations of holly trees. It's real, like the parents, and there's boys and girls, like, so you can see. All right, sorry, I'm going off topic. And then there's a place called oh, it's on the Yellow Trail. It'll come to me, but anyway, that's where all of these rock polypody are. So I love those things. So that's nature working to its, to its maximum, using like the most diverse place to have a solution, a plant that's specialized. If you ever want to get into growing moss instead of lawn and you have a lot of shade, the Joe Gardner show, he hosts Moss and Annie. So informative. She knows everything you could ever want to know about growing Moss and Annie. For real, it's a super cool. It's only like 40 minutes. And then stone dust. Stone dust is your friend when it comes to growing moss, or just in your garden. If you're ever looking for a great soil amendment for your vegetable garden, stone dust. A quart for every like 4x8 to sprinkle it over, because we've got that biology that's eating the rock. Why not just feed it already broken down rock? So now you're literally feeding the dust of what it wants, so it's easier for it to use. So yeah, stone dust is your friend. Some coastal plants for those of you that live close to the water that don't mind sea spray. Solidago sempervirens is one of my very personal favorite plants. Amazing root structure. That is seaside goldenrod. That's on the left. Bearberry does make little edible berries. Low ground cover. Super awesome alternative to creeping juniper, which is terrible for landscapers because it scratches us all up. And then New England aster. Doesn't mind the salt spray, spreads like crazy, attracts tons of pollinators in the fall. And if you have to have lawn, let's go for the Freedom Lawn. Anything that's free to grow under the height of my mower is good with me, right? But what we can do, if we're going to keep our lawn, we can choose these 4 plants. The turf type tall fescues are very drought tolerant. You can definitely find seed mixes if you ask for them with the tall fescues and the fine fescues. They make great lawn. They're very like stampede resistant, so if you're playing soccer on them, they're good for foot traffic. And then the darling of the day, micro clover, and then the barren strawberry. The barren strawberry is low growing and creeping, and then creeping thyme would be mixed in with all of those, so they would be happy together. I know everybody is hearing about Carex pennsylvanica. It's a sedge, it's a woodland sedge. It is a grass. It grows in deep shade, but it's like a clump. So if you're expecting to have like lawn that's like lawn, you're not going to get it with Carex pennsylvanica, but it will grow in the deep shade, and it is beautiful. Like when you see it in the forest, and it's like it looks like a lawn, but until you get up on top of it, you realize that it's like actually clumps, right? All right, so I think that's it for me. I have a couple of just wrap-ups. So Our Grateful Garden is my nonprofit. We teach natural gardening and do gardening events for people who are recovering from substance abuse. And we have social permaculture as part of that. So we teach permaculture. We have scholarships available to people in recovery so they can learn permaculture from us, find purpose. Just love this quote, Ansel Adams. So yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. I'm super grateful for you there.